Okay, we're looking at our creative writing again here and just looking at a few of the features of creative writing. And at this point, we're going to be looking at setting, where and when. And as with our, as we first sort of started off, we're looking to show rather than tell. Instead of saying, the date was April the 21st and on a winter's day in Auckland, we're going to provide little hints for our audience, so our audience does a little bit of work to work out the setting. Okay, you're painting little images in your audience's mind, and it's better, it's more effective if you don't just provide a whole lot of facts. That is with creative writing. So you've got to think about how you can show your setting. And I mean, we've got midday, summer, winter, midnight, 1 a.m., Wednesday. How would you show those things without actually saying it's midday? So we sort of chatted about that, and we figured that midday, people are having lunch. If you're at school, the bell goes for lunch. And if you're not at school, people are still eating. Your character might pop into a cafe for a sandwich, something like that. And that would give a pretty good clue for your audience, for your reader, that it's lunchtime. Summer, people wear different clothes to winter. In New Zealand, anyway, our summers are warm, and our winters are much cooler. So in the winter, people are wearing, the jerseys and sweaters and long pants and so forth. Summers, we've got people in jandals and shorts and singlets and so forth. So, those are fairly easy ways of helping your audience guess what season it is. Spring, flowers are starting to grow, new buds on the trees, and, daffodils blooming, that sort of stuff, lambs in the paddocks. Autumn, we've got the old fairly cliche of the leaves falling off the trees and the weather starting to get a bit cooler. Midnight, well, we sort of talked about how you can hear, and if you're in town, you can hear the clock tower, and there are other indicators that, whereas it might not be bang on midnight, you might have all sorts of indicators about the streets being very, very quiet and deserted. Because we're doing a short story, you've got to limit your settings. If you've got 5 or 6 settings that your character bounces around and you're describing each setting, you'll use up too much of your mileage on your setting rather than your characters and your plot, and you need to balance these things out a bit. As far as setting it in the past, the future, or the present, what we tend to do, the easiest thing is to link our characters to cultural markers. So, for example, at the moment, we've got the COVID, and that ties, we're talking about the COVID lockdown, we're tying that to 2020. We're talking about the presidential re-election of Trump, or his attempt to get re-elected. That's a 2020 thing. So those are the sorts, if it's and then we tie it to something in the past. It could be, Cyclone Bowler in 1988, or the 1981 Springbok tour, or the Vietnam War. The moon landing. There's all sorts of little, quite clear cultural markers that you can mention, or you can infer, so people will guess whether it's the past. Future, you're going to have to start talking about things that are happening perhaps in the present day as if they happened in the distant past, and be talking about, big events that haven't happened yet. You could be talking and talking about, various technical things that do not yet exist. As far as showing time passing, I mean, we talked about in movies, you might see some sort of a time lapse. You can pretty much do the same sort of thing with your writing and talk about the passage of the sun, of, the traffic, the movement of the traffic, the movement of the tides or the moon. We did a few examples in class. Let's have a quick look at some of these because they were fantastic. I walked past Captain Morgan's like I do every Saturday and onto the boardwalk. It was very peaceful without the cars driving past and all the loud kids. Young Nick's head was off in the distance and I could just make out a boat. The sun had started rising, so I sat down on the wooden bench while a couple of joggers came past in their shorts and singlets. Okay, really short, very effective description. So that ties it into Gisborne because we've got local landmarks. We've got Young Nick's Head. We've got Captain Morgan's. We know it's a Saturday. We know because the sun has just started rising, it's early in the morning and a couple of joggers are coming past in their shorts and singlets. We can probably assume that it's the summer. Next one, I stopped to admire the sun as it rose over Young Nick's Head, its rays reflecting off the gentle waves rolling to shore. Motivated runners were jogging up and down the boardwalk, the warm breeze brushing up against their tanned skin. I sipped on my coffee, keen to make every minute before work count. Okay, 3 sentences, also very effective description that have all sorts of clues there as to where it is happening. It's Gisborne, it's the beach. We've got the boardwalk. We've got, it's warm. They've got tan skin. It's the summer. And once again, it's early in the morning because the sun is rising and having a coffee before work. Very good. Nearly there, Mum says, I look out the window only to see my reflection looking back at me. My brother is asleep holding on to his teddy bear. I look back outside and I see the moon. It's a full moon tonight, I say to my parents. My dad gives me a grunt while my mother nods her head. We pull up to town. Not a single light on or a person to be seen. It was quiet. I didn't like it. Also, very good description, very good images that we've got here. We know it's very late at night. The brother's asleep and the parents are pretty non-communicative too. The inference there is that they're very tired. And of course, town was quiet, very quiet. No people to be seen, no lights. Another description here, the dull street lights struggled to light up the quiet town streets. Okay, so we already know that it's, early evening. The shops were closed and the streets were empty. More hawks were howling in the distance, the only voices to be heard. A gust of wind passed by, blowing the cold onto my face as I pulled my large coat tight and continued to walk down the street. Opening the door into my house, the aroma of roast pork welcomed me. Time for dinner, Mother said. Okay. We've got a time of day. We've got, as I said, and we've also got, it's obviously the winter, large coat, tight. We've got a cold gust of wind, and we've got a meal. Meal times are always a good signifier of time. Got a couple more here. The dormant buildings standing like ancient skeletons lying in the shadow of Mount Hukurangi as the sun comes up. The ice-covered buildings creak, and as a cold wind rattles through the rafters. Okay, we've got a really nice simile here in the first sentence. Dormant buildings standing like ancient skeletons. Very effective way of describing a sort of a derelict, deserted buildings. Mount Hukurangi ties it to a place, and we've certainly got a season with ice-covered buildings and cold winds. We've got another description here of what seems like a busy city. Cars lined the road, beeping was coming from every direction. I couldn't change lanes. It ended up not even feeling like we were moving, like the car was moving. I could see the skyline a few hundred meters in front of me. If it is this bad before we're in the city, how bad will it be once we're inside? Sounds very much like Auckland. And another neat little description of the beach. Very nice first sentence. The soft crashing of waves and the fresh smell of salt. It's already warm and the sun has barely risen. Okay, so we know it's earlier in the morning. We know it's the beach. We know it's the summer. And it's all in that first sentence. It's because it's already warm. Like they say, we're the first to see the sun. Gisborne. There's no traffic to break out the sound of seagulls in the distance looking for breakfast. Okay, another clear inference that it's very early in the morning. The water is warm. That's because it has been hot lately. Perfect time for an early surf. Okay, another signifier, another good easy clue that we're talking about summer here.